Cool Confidence, Episode 12, How to Slay Summer Without Sweating It.
Welcome to this episode of Health IQ. We are entering our hot season, and so today we have some tips to help you and your family be safe and help your yard survive and make the best use of our precious commodity, water. Joining me at the table today is Annie McCauley. Annie is our climate and health grant specialist or coordinator, and she has been preparing some information for our community on climate issues. Our film crew today is Robert Hockaday, Joyce Runyon, and Gordon Runyon, and I am Brenda Bishop. Climate affects our health in so many ways. One thing that affects our health is extreme heat, which is about that time. During winter, we're all hoping for summer, And I was just like, I can't wait for summer to get here. Once it gets here, it's like we have no in-between.
Yeah, there's no nice spring.
We're ready. It hits and we have hot right away. And then we're miserable and just wishing for winter again. And because of our high altitude, there's some other things we need to think about when we're out and about. And I know you've been doing some research on this, so I just turn it over to you and let it tell us how we can be healthier in the summer.
All right. So like Brenda said, we have extreme heat here in the summer in our area. And there's a lot of places that are getting hotter summers, colder winters, because the climate is always changing. I mean, shoot, we used to have an ice age, so can't deny that climate isn't changing. But in extreme heat, it's important to remember the people that are the most at risk. And that's going to be adults over 65, children under 4, and then anybody with existing medical problems, especially if you have heart problems. It's very, very hard to be out in the heat. And then people without access to air conditioning, because, we do live in a very poor community and there are still a lot of people that don't have access to air conditioning. Right. And it's a little bit north of here. They used to not have very harsh, hot winter or summers. And so now they're having more higher temps, and they don't have air conditioning because they've never needed it.
Well, remember all the schools that we went to when you were 4-Hers that didn't have air conditioning?
Yes.
When we would go there in the summer, we'd be miserable.
Yes. Yeah. So I remember going to Capitan and just about dying of, from the heat because the windows don't even open.
Yeah. It was like 105.
No breeze going through there. So some tips to start, to think about to stay healthy in the heat. Most important is going to be stay hydrated. So what I found was that even if you're not thirsty, you should still be drinking. They suggest before you're going to go out in the heat, before you're going to start something, you should at least start with 16 ounces of water.
Before?
Yes. So pre-hydrate. And then every 15, 20 minutes, you should stop and take at least 5 to 7 ounces in. Because you're going to be sweating and you don't, you're losing water. So you need to make sure you're staying on top of it.
And so often we don't think about stopping. We just wait till we get back in the house.
Or wait till you're super thirsty and then you drink a bunch and then you have a stomach ache because you're just too hot.
And ice water. People chug that ice water and that gives me a stomach ache when I'm outside too.
Yes, it can. The other thing is to always try to take breaks if you can, or to work slower. If you some people just have to be out in the heat. Some people have jobs where they're out in the heat. So drinking lots and lots of water and then making sure that you take breaks when you can. And then if you are working and it's very hot and you don't have another option, just to work slower, to not overexert yourself. Check up on the elderly. So if you have elderly neighbors, or if you know of somebody that might be sick, and those without ACs, make sure that you're checking on them to make sure they're doing okay. Because that is that target group that that you see it on the news sometimes where they actually pass away because their house gets so hot and they have health issues. Right. So be checking up on them. Well, if it's too hot for them, maybe offer to give them a ride somewhere where it's cool for them to cool off, whether it's the public library, even maybe going just to the grocery store and walking around or pushing them around in a wheelchair just so they have a chance to cool off and get out of the heat.
Well, and some larger communities have cooling centers. I want to touch on that. Seniors, I was just reading, because they don't drink as much liquid as the rest of us, they're already dehydrated before even thinking about they're only drinking about 70% of the water they need a day.
Yeah, so they tend to not drink enough water, which leads to other problems like UTIs and stuff. And I don't know why it is, but they do tend to be dehydrated. I've seen that too. Never, ever, ever leave kids or animals in a vehicle. You know, we always think that that's like a common sense thing, but like sometimes, you know, you think about, well, I'm just going to run back in the house I forgot, you know, my phone or my keys. Well, you know, that might take you a minute or two. My fear is always like, what if my car dies and then like they're in the hot car?
Stuck in there.
So if I do have to run back in the house, I always like roll the windows like halfway and then blast the air conditioner just in case the car dies, you know, because my car used to die all the time. So like I always have like this backup plan, or I just unload everybody and I'm like, we're going back in the house and starting over again.
I can remember one time we were getting ready to leave and my husband says, oh, I need something out of the shop. And I'm like, oh, I forgot this in the house. Kids are already in their car seats and we have the pickup going. But we let a wasp spin. Before we got back, they were stung with wasp stings.
Oh, how awful. Yeah, so like never leave your, you know, pets or kids in the car because they could get stung by wasps. But more importantly, it's very, very hot in the car if the car dies or if it's not even on. And then if you are going to be doing stuff outside like yard work or exercise, you know, try to do it cooler times of the day, early in the morning, late in the day, rest frequently, stay hydrated. Very, very important. You can also wear light clothing. Yeah. So like light, loose clothing that's light colors. Wear a hat, wear sunscreen because you don't want to get a sunburn because that's going to just make you hotter and it's not good for you, not good for your skin.
Well, and there's even some talk about wearing longer sleeves.
Yes.
And we all think, oh, it's too hot, so we're out there in our tank tops or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So I actually read a thing, this was a couple of years ago, about like wearing long sleeves. It keeps you cooler actually because like the sun is, if you're in a tank top, like that's more surface area of your skin that's getting heated. So I don't, you know, kind of makes sense. I always try to wear a longer sleeve if I'm doing yard work during the day because I don't want to get a sunburn.
Yeah. And I do try to get up early to go water the trees and all, but sometimes
just
don't get up quite
early enough, or it's already hot at 6:30.
True.
The other thing, like, you know, I keep saying to stay hydrated, try not to drink alcoholic beverages or to limit alcoholic beverages, sugary drinks. I know it's popular to drink like a Gatorade or something because you think you're hydrating. But you really, like, they're made for athletes that are working really hard and really need to replenish. And while, yes, you might be needing to replenish depending on how much work you're doing, it's probably like, for me, I know I'm not working hard enough to need a Gatorade. And it can actually make you more dehydrated. So caffeine, alcoholic beverages, sugary drinks aren't really going to be that much benefit.
High in sodium, which can also dehydrate you.
Yes. And then there's cooling devices. So like the little neck rolls that you can get, like that have, I don't know, cooling beads in them. I don't remember who gave them out. If the Health Council did, the little like yellow rags that were.
We had some blue ones.
Or blue ones, yeah. That you dip in water and like cold water and then you kind of snap it. And so those are very good ways to keep cool. And even in your house, a couple of things, like if you wanted to invest, you know, new windows that are going to be, keep the heat out. If you don't have the money to do that, you could do like a reflective tint that are really inexpensive. You can even put tinfoil up if it's like a south side and you're in that area, you know, you can have the tinfoil window, but it's going to help reflect some of that heat out, especially when we have those really, really hot days in the middle of the summer.
Well, and you can even put that on cardboard so you don't have to have it up all the time.
Yeah, like we put up our tinfoil for the middle of the day when the sun's shining on it. Fixing your storm doors, fixing your storm windows. You can recaulk them. That helps a lot. You can do the like rubber stripping in your windows and your doors. That helps a lot. I know like at our shop, we have to redo the weather stripping probably like at least once a year because it's just the sun beats down on everything here and eats it. And it gets dry rot. So changing that just helps with the cold and the hot. Yeah.
You usually think about weather stripping and all that for cold.
Yes.
But it makes a lot of sense for hot too.
Yeah. Like in dirt. Yeah, in the dirt. But you could do your windows, you can do doors, and even just like hanging something over a window, especially our south facing windows to where it's blocking some of that heat and that sun from coming in.
So when my grandparents lived, in more humid climate, and so they had a lot of box fans and things. Of course, they're noisy.
Yes.
And that was enough to keep their house cool without any air conditioning. But so if someone doesn't have any air conditioning, they could still use a fan in their house.
So that actually leads to my next thing is like humidity. You brought up humidity. If you have swamp coolers, which a lot of us here in the Southwest have swamp coolers, but sometimes we do have humid days and your swamp cooler is not going to work really great.
Right.
A swamp cooler, you have to have the window cracked to have that breeze pulling the air through. If it's really humid, everything I read says to crack that window a little bit more or maybe open a few more windows because you really want to dry out the air inside so that the swamp cooler can work. And then employ a lot of fans. Just getting the air moving.
That's a good tip.
Just having that air circulating helps a lot.
We usually have the other problem where there's not enough humidity, so you're out there spraying your swamp cooler
Right.
with a hose.
Because it can't keep up because it's like evaporating too fast because it's so hot.
Yes.
And I've also seen a thing where you can make your own little air conditioner, like in a pinch, like with a box or like a bin, and then you can cut a hole in it and you put your fan on it, and then a hole on the side, and then you put ice in it, and so your fan's blowing into the box and pushing the air over the ice and out.
Makes a lot of sense.
If it was in a pinch and your air conditioner's broken, maybe we all need to hang out in a small room and we have our fan air conditioner.
Well,
Just to keep
I
a
was
little bit
thinking
cool.
you could get some cold towels, wet towels, and put over your fan, and it would dry out eventually, but it would help cool that air.
Yes. Yeah, like even dipping it in like ice water and having them hanging there. And then as they dry, just re-dip them.
Yeah,
That probably could work too.
just something if you didn't have anything.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about was heat wave, because we seem the last couple of years, I feel like we have had heat waves or like that week or 2 weeks that we just horrible heat.
Oh yes, awful.
And where we're just, it's like you run from your house to your car and melt and have to drive with like your oven mitts, and then you get where you're going and then you have to like hurry and get inside because it's just so hot. The things to remember on really, really hot days: stay hydrated. You could even do smaller meals throughout the day, so you're not like as full, because that's going to make you feel hotter.
Right.
Bring your pets inside, or bring them, make sure that they have water, make sure that they have a shady area even just to hang out. Don't walk them during the hot parts of the day. Don't put your hand on the cement. If it's too hot for you to touch, then it's too hot for your pet. And then you could even set up fans. Like we have sheep, and when it's really, really hot, like we even put box fans out for the sheep to lay in front of. And they do. Like it's like they know that that's where they can go and lay and get a little bit of relief.
Or when we had pigs, we had to make big mud puddles for them.
Right. You go out and spray them and have their fans going to keep them cooled off. And then always remember to check the heat index, because the heat index is temp plus, like the temperature plus the humidity and what it actually feels like. So it might only be 90 degrees outside, but with the humidity, it's going to make it feel like 98, 99 or even higher.
And what's a dangerous?
What I was actually reading when I was looking at like two-a-days and like ball practice, like anything, I think it said over 92 degrees heat index, so it's humidity plus the temperature, is actually kind of dangerous for kids, especially, or like athletes to be outside. So I mean, if it's dangerous for an athlete, it's probably dangerous for me because I'm not athletic and in shape.
Yeah.
So things to think about, like do short bursts of work, make sure you're hydrated, maybe even just put off working until it's a little bit cooler.
Like when my son was playing football, they actually had their two-a-days at night under the lights because it was too hot to do it during the day because of the humidity.
And even in the in the early morning
that's
here
our
we have
monsoon season,
Yeah, and it's humid sometimes in the morning when we wake up. So you go outside at 6 o'clock and you're already sweating because we wake up and it's humid because of the dew. Like I know that like our barn is facing east, and so the sun just beats into it first thing in the morning, and it's like horrible underneath there. Like if you're going out there to work and do anything,
Yeah.
it's actually better during the heat of the day because it's in the shade versus having that humidity with the heat underneath there and no breeze.
Well, I think for, me, heat is really hard sometimes because I'm inside all day. And, then you go outside and it's just, to do anything, it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, because
And
you're
it's
not used to it.
easy to get, overwhelmed with the heat and a little lightheaded. And what are some of the symptoms of heat exhaustion?
So those are symptoms of heat exhaustion. It's very important to know the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke and to know the symptoms. And if you're in doubt, call 911. So with heat exhaustion, it's actually when the body's going into mild shock because the blood flow to your organs is restricted, and it can actually lead to a heat stroke. So the first symptoms, you might feel faint and dizzy, very, very sweaty, your skin might feel kind of cool and clammy, nausea, vomiting, rapid weak pulse, and muscle cramps. And those are just some of the symptoms. You might have maybe one, you might have all, but you should get that person or yourself to a cooler place or somewhere with an air conditioner. Start drinking water. You can do like cool rags on yourself or on that person, and then monitor them to make sure they're not getting worse. You should see an improvement pretty quick, I think. So if there's not an improvement, then it's better to just take them to the ER or call 911 because it could be heat stroke. And heat stroke, sweating actually stops in the body, and so the body starts shutting down, and it can cause brain damage and death.
Oh, wow.
So heat stroke's very important to look for, and it can be a throbbing headache and confusion. The person is not sweating at all, body temp above 103, red, hot, dry skin, nausea and or vomiting, rapid, strong pulse, and it's very dangerous. So you need to move the person to a cool place as soon as possible, call 911. You can do cold cloths, but it said not to give that person anything to drink.
Oh, okay. So that's important to know the difference.
Yes. I know that I've been working with my grandpa in the summer before and had like mild symptoms of heat exhaustion where he got mad because I was throwing up, and he took me to the house, and my mom was like, something's wrong, and so she had me laying under the air conditioner because we had a swamp cooler, and she was putting cold rags on me. But I remember like feeling faint and dizzy and like having a stomach ache. And
well, and the times that we've had the rodeo and the horse show here where we're out all day and not used to that, and it'd be 110 outside.
And us kids are wearing, like long sleeve button down or
the
wool coat for English
clothes. And I always feel so bad for them. But those parents do keep them hydrated, and they do try to get them in the shade as much as possible. But I've always worried about that.
Yes, for sure.
So talking about kids, I can see, I was just seeing something that someone says, oh, it's finally a nice enough day. My kid can go out to play because it's been a little cold. But then I'm thinking the same thing on this side. Could be too hot for your kid to go out to play.
So like I said earlier, children under 4, they don't regulate their temperature, I think, as well. So that's can be kind of dangerous. Hot playground equipment. Like we can all remember going down the metal slide or getting on the swing and it burning our legs.
And we still have some metal slides.
Yeah, we do have some metal slides around town. I know my son likes to go to the park, and so we always have to explain to him, that we have to wait till the playground equipment's in the shade for a little bit before we can go. Because even in the mornings, like, we were talking, it's just too hot. So kid safety for summer, remember the hot car rule, like very, very important not to leave them in the car. Keeping them hydrated can be hard because I feel like they don't want to drink, or, at least with an adult, you can force yourself to drink some water, but it's really hard to force little kids to drink water and make sure that they're hydrated. This doesn't have to do much with heat, but I saw it on some things, is making sure your kids are wearing like a helmet if they're out playing, riding their bikes, just some summer safety, and have water with them. If you are going swimming or you have a pool, water safety is really important to remember in the summer with kids, because sometimes, you tell them we're going to get in the pool in 10 minutes and you maybe are going to change another kid's out, into their swimsuit, and you look outside and the big kid's already in the pool.
Right.
And that's very, very, very dangerous because they could slip and fall. Drownings do happen, and it doesn't take much water. So make sure, constant supervision, wearing life jackets. Other summer things where fireworks can be very dangerous for kids in the summer because they start selling them early. And then insects and snakes. So wearing insect repellent, sunscreen. I added snakes because, we live in a place where there are a lot of snakes.
Well, and teaching them about, looking at their surroundings for snakes.
Yeah, like we had a little tiny baby rattler in our yard last summer, and luckily Sean noticed it, but Hollis and I didn't even notice it.
Oh,
As an adult, I'm like looking for them and don't notice them, so it's terrifying.
I have stepped over the babies and as well as my kids.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, afterwards. But
that is something that comes with the heat, is the snakes are going to start coming out. So as we get warmer days.
So when my children were babies, I worked really hard to keep sunscreen on them when we were outside, and hats. And it wasn't always successful as they got a little older, but I think that sunscreen and hats are very, very important for our kids.
We started Hollis really young on the sunscreen and hat thing, and he is really good about sunscreen, he calls it. When he goes outside, even though he's going to be playing in the shade, he's like, I need my sunscreen. And then we got him a little floppy hat because where we live too in the heat, we do have to worry about skin cancer, later on, and because we have just so much sun. So very important to start that young to teach them that. And then being careful around lawnmowers and equipment that you have out, because that's another thing. When it's hot, the grass is growing, we're out cutting weeds, lawnmowers, things like that are all very dangerous for kids to be around.
All kinds of tools. So we were going to talk a little bit about yards, but we've sort of hit our time. So maybe we should save that for
another day
podcast and move on into our food for thought. And I had several, and you sort of chose this one.
Yeah.
It is so hot. The chickens are laying hard-boiled eggs.
It does get that hot though here.
It does. And you often wonder about those eggs.
Right.
How long have they been in that nest?
Yeah, we kind of have like a 1-day rule with our eggs, and we still float them because it's just too hot some days.
Oh, yes.
For them, just even for them being laid and being in the sun for, an hour or so.
But it was sort of a funny quote, but it is true that things are hot, and we got to remember that if it will cook the eggs, it could also cook your body.
Yes. So if you could crack the egg and put it on the sidewalk and it cooks, it's probably not a good idea to be outside.
And so also,
if you don't have to,
making sure your kids have their shoes on and all before they go out the door to avoid those
burnt
hot
feet
sidewalks. So all that kind of stuff. Well, thank you, Annie. This has been very informative. And thank you all for joining us as we try to beat the heat. Come back for our next episode as we'll be discussing some things your teens will need before they head back to school.
Special thanks to our guest contributor, Annie McCauley of the podcast committee and the Chica coordinator. Our host was Brenda Bishop. Podcast crew today, director Robert F. Hockaday, producers were Robert F. Hockaday and Joyce Runyon. Video crew was Robert F. Hockaday and Gordon Runyon. Music provided by David Morris.
This podcast was made possible by a New Mexico Department of Health Better Together grant. Additional information about today's topic will be on the Health IQ blog located on the Quay County Health Council's website at www.QCHEALTHCOUNCIL.org. Be sure to follow the Quay County Health Council on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quay County Health. This podcast was created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for advice from a healthcare or mental health professional.